I mean, obviously would tell him. Those women were insulting the queen. I thought a lecture was in order. Oh, but everyone is entitled to their own opinion. What? I narrow my eyes at him. Something like this can't be helped. Bad rumors are unavoidable. Rod looks away, his expression suddenly pained. This wouldn't have happened if I hadn't wished for. Rod never finishes the sentence. He clears his throat before looking at us again. What was he going to say? We shouldn't keep you from returning home, Viorica. I'll take Z back to the palace. Viorica's eyes narrows and she looks ready to say something, but Rod has already reached out for my hand to pull me along behind him. My eyes narrow as I recognize the path we are on. This is not the way back to the palace. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. We're going to the march-in. Why? Because I was on my way there before I was forced to take a detour because someone was drawing attention to herself. What? Rod ignores me and we walk the rest of the way to the march-in in silence. Waltz is the only person in the reception room when we enter. Prince Rod? Princess? It's a little late for the two of you to be here. I had meant to be here earlier. Is Lady Parfait here? Waltz nods. I'll go get her. Wait here. As soon as Waltz leaves us alone, Rod turns to me, his expression rigid. Rod steps closer and grabs my shoulders. Yo? What is happening? What? I wasn't able to say so earlier, but because we were out in public, but you should know just how much danger you're in now, and yet you thought it was okay to go around on your own? It was my day off today. It's not unreasonable for me to want time for myself. Time for yourself? Don't you understand the meaning of me careful? Why would you do something as foolish as going out into town alone? I cannot help but bristle at his tone. Why are you so angry? Because you're... Rod trails off and looks away. Because you're family. So you're finally acknowledging me as family? I notice his cheeks turning red. To be honest, you're less of a family member, more just important. Important? Because of all that you do for Emmeline, you're important to my sister. Looks uncomfortable as he says the words, and I cannot help but marvel at his embarrassment. Why is he so embarrassed? Rod changes the topic as he turns away from me. Why were you with Victoria? I can only think of one reason you'd speak to her. My curse. You thought you'd find out about my curse through her. I shrugged. I can only assume that your curse has something to do with Viorica. Wait, we never got the diamond thing. We can just like skip through. Do not tell him. It is nothing. If he has to tell me what happened, I will have to assume that the noblemen were telling the truth about you. Z has done nothing wrong. In fact, I think Z only did what you or Emmeline would have done had you heard the awful things those women were saying about your mother. What? She stood up for the queen when she didn't have to. Then why didn't you just say so? Would you have believed me? Rod drops his gaze from mine. You never gave me a chance to believe you, did you? He would have believed me? How am I to know that? Rod is like a walking contradiction. Rod glances up again, this time to look at Viorica. I shouldn't keep you from returning home, Viorica. I'll take Z back to the palace. Viorica's eyes narrows and she looks ready to say something, but Rod has already reached out for my hand to pull me along behind him. Okay, there's no diamond here, I guess. So we're gonna go back to our original choice and then just speed through it. Wait, no. We learn. Tell him and then... Yep. I can only assume that your curse has something to do with Viorica. I look up when Rod says something to stare at the curious sight before me. He has taken Sebi off his shoulder and is holding the doll in his hand away from his face. The two seem to engage in some silent conversation, then gently somebody speaks words I can hear. This is the right thing to do. You needed to let her help you, Rod. Rod bites down on his lower lip before briefly closing his eyes. Eventually he returns Sebi to his usual spot on his shoulder and turns to me. Fine, you're stubborn and you're not going to quit investigating unless I tell you, are you? You're right. Viorica is the reason I was cursed. Rod sits down on the seat. and lets out a heavy sigh. His eyes are far away as he speaks to me. I was in love with Viorica, but I wasn't brave enough to tell her. I just followed her around like some kind of puppy. One day Viorica hadn't come home, and it was raining very heavily, so I went out to look for her. I found her walking alone along the bank of the river. I called out to her to tell her to be careful, but I don't think she ever heard me. She slipped in. Rod swallows. He clenches one of his hands into a fist. She fell into the river. I dived in after her. I somehow managed to get both of us onto the riverbank, but it didn't look like Viorica was breathing. Did he trade his voice for her life? I didn't know what to do. I started panicking. I ran off to try to find help, but I couldn't find anyone in the storm. When I returned, she was gone. I rushed to her house, and a doctor was already there tending to her along with Desamon. Rod's gaze is vacant as he nods. When Viorica began to fall in love with Desamon, I felt helpless. Wait, no, I guess he didn't. Never mind. Did you not tell her that you were the one that saved her? Why would I? Viorica was so happy believing that she and Desamon were fated to be together. I couldn't do that to her. But surely if you told her, Rod interrupts me. I want the people I love to be happy. I don't care if their happiness caused me pain. I'd rather bear that alone instead of bringing down those around me. My chest aches as I watch Rod's face. I never would have guessed that Rod would be so selfless. But that didn't stop me from thinking that I could still make her love me instead. I've decided to become what I thought Viorica wanted most, the Prince Charming of the fairy tale she so adored. And so I asked a witch to turn me into one. She stole my voice in exchange. Oh! Okay, what? Only then did I realize she had inflicted the fairy tale curse upon me, the mermaid's curse. The next day the king turned up at our house, claiming that he'd been looking for my mother for years and that he never stopped loving her. When the king married my mother, I became a prince. It was just as the witch promised. Wait, but was this like, because the king, we know he always loved Ophelia. So was it like the witch just did this because they knew it was going to happen anyways? Or did they like speed up the process? I'm not sure about that. But it didn't matter. I didn't see it when I made the deal with the witch, but I couldn't be blind to it forever. Desamon and Viorica really do love each other. They make each other happy. Nothing I can do will ever change that. Rod, Prince Rod? Oh. Parfait pauses in her tracks when she sees me. Have I interrupted something? No. Rod moves over to Parfait, but he stops to glance back at me. I won't be long. Parfait looks at Rod and then at me, her face puzzled, but she does not say a word as Rod and her leave the room. We're gonna tell them we got our second medal thing, you know? Or like the second piece of the slipper? We didn't even get to see it. I did not get the chance to discuss Rod's curse with him later that night, nor did I get the chance to speak with Parfait and Delora about my suspicion on Sir Alcaster. Days go by, but still I find myself overwhelmed by preparations for the ball. Things become more frantic every day, making it difficult for me to have any time to speak with anyone. Eventually I decide to write a letter containing my suspicions of Sir Alcaster. I tell Parfait and Delora that I believed he might be the witch they are looking for. I also add that I believe Fritz might somehow be involved, though my suspicions are not as well founded with him. To make matters worse, he went and disappeared. I have not heard anyone mention his name here for a very long time. I am forcibly pulled from my thoughts when I collide with someone. The linens I had been holding scatter all over the floor. Excuse me, I did not. I look up and my voice trails off when I see who I bumped into. Lost in your thoughts? Sir Mithras looks at me, something veiled in his smiling eyes. I suppose those are the linens the queen asked for. Yes, please excuse me. I begin gathering the linens, but as I reach out for one, Sir Mithras picks it up first. Allow me to help you. It will be fine. This was partially my fault. Let me assist you. I bite my lip and do not protest. Sir Mithras helps me gather the rest of the linens. I am contemplating my schedule for the rest of the day when I realize that Sir Mithras has been talking. I don't suppose you have any idea who that maid is. Maid? There's a cold amusement in Sir Mithras' gaze. Surely you've heard the rumors of the young prince having been seen with a royal maid somewhere around town. Oh, yo. We know. Rumor has it that Prince Rod has found love among the common folk, much like his royal stepfather has. Rod with a maid? As far as I'm aware, the only maid he has been out in town has been... I freeze as Sir Mithras straightens, patting down his clothes for a dust before holding out some of the linens to me. If it is true, I wish him the best, though I wish he would be more discreet about it. A real scandal is the last thing we need right now. I shakingly take the linens from Sir Mithras as he inclines his head to me. Have a good day, Z. I walked to the dining hall in a haze, my mind whirling with the implication of what Sir Mithras just said. I'm sure it was those noblemen who spread this rumor. Ah, Z, thank you for bringing these to me. Just leave them on the table. I curtsy after placing the linens down as a commandment. If that is all. Z? I straighten at the tone of Ophelia's voice. When I look up, I see that her expression is carefully still. I have to ask you something that you might not want to answer, but I very much hope you will. I'll answer if I can. Good. Ophelia sighs as she sits down on one of the dining table chairs and folds her hands on her lap. I've been trying to ignore it since palace gossip is mostly false, but I can't help my curiosity. I want to ask about your relationship with my son. No. Oh, no. What? I understand you and Rod were together in town. My nose is so itchy. I understand you and Rod were together in town. I understand you and Rod were together in town a few days ago. Do you want to tell me what happened? I don't know what to answer here. Oh. Explain the situation, dismiss the gossip. I mean, should we just be honest? I'm gonna see what happens when we explain the situation. If Ophelia is asking me about these rumors, then I can only imagine what sort of story these women made up. Prince Rod was just on his way somewhere when he chanced upon me. When he saw that I was in trouble with two noblemen, he stopped to intervene, that is all. Rod said the same thing. Then why did you ask me, Your Majesty? To see what you thought about the situation. I don't think anyone should get a say in what your relationship with Rod is. My relationship with Rod? It was the right choice. Let's go! I like you, Z, and I'm certain that you're good for Rod. If I had my way, I would let him court you. I feel heat in my cheeks as I trip over my words. The Prince and I are not in a relationship. Remember, the royal family cannot end up with a servant. Where there's love, there's hope. Social status shouldn't stop you from being happy, Z. What about the fact that I'm Rod's stepsister? Why you not bring it up, you know? I bite down on that statement fiercely. I already know that what role I am playing here, and I cannot break it. Ophelia looks at me with a complicated expression before she sighs. I will not push you on this any further. Be careful, Z. Your closeness with my son and daughter has not gone unnoticed. I do not believe in limiting relationships because of one's status, but I understand. I curtsy as I move toward the dining hall's entrance. What does Ophelia mean by that closeness not going unnoticed? Yo, why can't we just end up with Emmeline? Later that day, as I'm waiting outside the throne room for Emmeline to finish one of her classes, two maids walked toward me and stopped in front of me. Z, isn't it? What is it? I haven't already finished all my tasks for the day. I'm sure you have. Probably rushed through all of them so that you could hang out around the prince and the princess tonight. The head housekeeper has been giving you a lighter load so you can afford the time to play around, I blink at them confused. I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't play dumb. All the servants know what you've been doing. Just because you're Princess Emmeline's personal maid doesn't make you better than the rest of us. I'd be careful not to get too big for your boots, Z. Are you threatening me? What if we are? Then I'd be very That's probably him. Or Emmeline. Either one. I'd be very disappointed in you. Yes, I knew it was Emmeline! Princess Emmeline. Emmeline moves to stand beside me, a disapproving expression on her face. I did not expect such petty cruelty from the two of you. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Your Highness. You really do have a talent for getting yourself into trouble. Rod. Rod pauses briefly, his eyes meeting mine for a second before he looks at the maids. Don't you have better things to do than bully my sister's maid? We apologize, Your Highness. We'll be on our way. The two maids run off, and Emmeline turns to look at me. Are you okay? I'm about to answer when I notice that Rod is abruptly walking away from us. I frown at his back. He had only just started being nice to me, and now he's back to acting as if I do not exist. What did I do? Emmeline puts her hands on my back and gently pushes me forward. You wanted to ask him something, right? I could see it in your eyes. Emmeline smiles as she pushes the door to the throne room open. I have a few more questions to ask my teacher. I'll be a while. But she disappears to the throne room before I can finish. I glance down the hallway. Roger disappeared down and then back at the throne room again. My thoughts whirl together in a vague mess until I make my decision. Wait! At the sound of my approaching footstep, Rod turns and looks at me. He scowls but does not say anything.